Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Rough Riders, where every week we talk writing, self-publishing, and making it as an author. This week, I'm joined by indie horror fiction author Matthew R. Taylor, who is author of the short stories collection Dead Echoes and Silent Screams. So I'm very happy to have him here. He was actually the first person who ever emailed me about this, which was months ago, actually, when I went on YouTube and said I would like to interview people. And it's taken a little while to get to this, but finally we are meeting. So how are you doing today, Matthew?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. So it's pretty exciting doing this.
Yeah, awesome. So this is new to me. I don't know if you've ever been really interviewed before about your writing, but I've certainly never interviewed anyone until the last week or two. So it's going pretty well. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about your horror writing. I've only had one horror author on here so far, so it's been
Okay.
largely fantasy authors. So it's going to be really cool to hear your take on things, and then the fact that you were also a poet is interesting to me. So I'm really glad to have you here. So I guess we'll start where we've all been starting in every episode so far, which is tell us a little bit about yourself.
So like I said, my name's Matthew R. Taylor. Been writing a couple of years. Started out writing short stories and stuff when I was a little kid. Just weird little things like that. Took every creative writing class I could in high school and actually won a competition at that point. Got to go to a local college here and spend the day with creative writing majors. So that was pretty cool. Um, didn't really do much writing after that. Kind of went into the workforce and did all that stuff and met my wife and started a family. And writing kind of didn't really pop up in my life at that point. Um, but yeah, years later, then I ended up '06. I was diagnosed with my eye disease, which is retinitis pigmentosa, and so basically my eyes have been dying off. Year after year, I lose more and more sight. Um, I'd say at this point, I probably 95% sight loss. What I do have isn't really usable, just basic light perception. I can tell where a window is or a doorway if it's bright enough. Otherwise, can't see anything. And so, yeah, I quit working 2011, spring of 2011, and kind of for a while didn't really know what to do. Um, I'd always worked and provided for the family, so yeah, it kind of fell into that whole spiral of what do I do? Um, I think that's around that times when I rediscovered writing, kind of getting back into it. Learned about blogs, wrote for some different blogs. Back then started out with that kind of just short stories and articles for blogs, and then yeah, just tried college a little bit. Didn't really get into the college thing. Found some accessibility barriers there, along with just not really knowing what I wanted to do. Limited for someone like me to, there's limits on realistically what can I go do,
Mm-hmm.
um so decided, I really want to get serious about writing, and so started doing that and putting out more and more stuff and started writing books and just kind of, yeah, haven't stopped.
Wow. So there's a lot of questions that I have for you then, just based on your experience, because I feel like there are some things or some practical issues with maybe writing or self-publishing more so that would be really complicated by being visually impaired. So it would be
Yeah.
really interesting to hear about that, because I don't know how many people who watch my videos probably really considered it before. I want to start by asking, and I don't want to make this all about that, but you definitely have a unique experience, and I really think it should be shared. So when it comes to actually writing, the way that you use like Microsoft Word or Pages or whatever you're going to use, the first thing that I think of is it must be tougher to actually go back and edit things if you're going to have to use. I guess to me, I'm assuming that you would use text to speech or something similar to
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
So that must be a lot tougher if you need to actually go through audio instead of just scrolling kind of quickly through a manuscript visually. So how does the
Mhm.
editing process look for you?
It's a challenge. My wife, I
Yeah.
read a newsletter called Blood Soaked and Blind. So I put out weekly newsletters, and my wife reads them, and she'll catch things from time to time I miss, because my screen reader will say it one way, and I'll think I know what I've heard, But if I don't go back character by character and look at that word, if I just assume, oh, okay, like there, for example,
Yeah.
if I want THERE and I think it said it right and don't go check it, it could have put in EIR instead. But if I don't go check it, I don't know.
Yeah, there's so many
So I
homophones in English
yes,
that
yep.
just like the word
So
two, it could be three different things. So
well, to
yeah.
touch on what you were talking about there, so I write with Scrivener, actually, is the app I use, which I found works beautifully with screen readers. It's amazing app. Everything is fully accessible in Scrivener for the visually impaired community. And so that was really, really nice to find. Bit of a price tag to get it on my Mac, but definitely worth it. So yeah, I actually don't type. I'm
Oh, okay.
horrible at typing. It's not a visual thing. I didn't do great in typing class way back in the 90s in high school. And so I'm just not a great typer. So I actually just dictate to my computer and it types it for me.
Mhm.
Which allows me, I can actually write pretty quick that way. But yeah, I got to go back and fix that. So then I go back, I switch it to, so different key, my computer does different commands depending on what I touch on it. And so I do different key commands and go sentence by sentence. And so I'll start out there at the top of a chapter and I'll start one sentence at a time. I'll go through and listen, move on to the next and listen. If I hear anything out of place or weird, I'll go back and look at it, like move back word by word and then look at it and go, okay, what's wrong here? Am I using the right word? Punctuation missing, that kind of stuff. Um, and then, yeah, once I do the line by line, then I move through paragraph at a time, reading it or listening to it. And then again, if it sounds weird, I go back through at that point and fix it. So it's a multiple step process, line by line, paragraph by paragraph. And then once I get through all that, then I listen to the whole thing all the way through once to see what I think.
Mhm.
So
Well,
definitely a longer process.
I'll say I had talked to someone else. We were talking about the editing process, and we were saying that one of the ways that can help you catch mistakes that you might overlook if you're just reading really quickly is to have a text-to-speech generator, like either whatever's built into Word or something that you can download, actually read it out loud to you, and you'll catch things that when you hear it aloud, you might not have noticed it while you're reading. So you instantly get to do that. That's
Yeah.
not like something
Yep.
that is just an option for someone else. Like for the way that you have to actually go write and edit, that's just sort of built in to the process. So
Yeah.
it
Yep.
could definitely, it can help you when you hear things out loud, even if even if you're not visually impaired, that is helpful. So I would think that the end product is probably, it sounds pretty good because you have to listen to it anyway. So when you actually go and self-publish it, like you go on KDP or whatever you use,
Mhm.
actually, what do you use to put your books out?
KDP.
Okay.
Yep. I'm an Amazon KDP. Yep.
Okay, cool. So when you do go to KDP, you have to upload your manuscript and all of that, and then check to see that everything is displaying right. How do you go about doing that?
I call my wife. My wife actually, my wife is
Yeah.
my quote unquote editor.
Mhm.
Um, she has graciously taken on both books that are on sale right now. Making, she's actually the one that with the poems in One Tree in Hell, she did all the visuals, making each poem its own unique thing in the book.
Oh, cool.
Because to make them stand out, and that was just really cool of her. But yeah, so I write it all. I do my form of editing, go through and get everything done, and then she'll sit down and we'll go through and look at it and make sure I didn't miss anything. And then as long as that's good, then yeah, it's okay. Let's start working on getting it on KDP. Look at it from there and kind of work on it together. So
That's fantastic that you have someone
yeah,
who's actually supportive of just the writing in general and the self-publishing of it, because I could tell you, I no longer, thank God, but I was in a very long-term relationship for a while where, like 7 years, where I had absolutely no support whatsoever from the other person when it came to writing. They didn't read anything that I had written. They didn't care when I would talk about it. They didn't really, and there was no involvement whatsoever from them. So it's beautiful to me that you are actually in a marriage with someone who supports your writing and is also willing to take the time to contribute in a way to the end product. So that's fantastic. I'm really
oh yeah,
happy for you.
I feel very fortunate. She's extremely supportive of my writing career, always cheering me on with it. She's a lot of times I'll be like, I have an idea for a story, and she'll talk it out with me, and we'll, okay, well, what if you did this? Or we'll be driving around and she'll be like, hey, story idea for you. And
Oh, I
so I'll be
love
like, ooh,
that.
yeah, like, let me write that down. I actually told her I have an idea for a novel. It's actually a psychological thriller, not even horror.
Okay.
Um, but I told her I want her to write it with me. Because it would be from a couple different points of view, and I wanted her to write the one point of view. Um,
Hmm.
so I thought that'd be kind of fun. Maybe down the road in the future we can do that together. But
That would be
yeah, no,
great.
she's extremely supportive of it. I feel very fortunate that I have someone so supportive and that, is always cheering me on and making sure, I'm always feeling good about what I'm doing or talking things out with me. So
Well, if you ever do decide that you want to co-author something with her, I will tell you, having done that before, and then also I did an interview with two co-authors about a week ago, and it was, when you write something with someone else, when you engage in just a creative process with someone else, it's a lot more than just an exercise in creativity. It really does
yeah,
bring the two of you closer together. And when you're just kind of creating something that is almost like a child in a way together, even if you're just doing it
yeah,
with your friend or something, it really is just, it builds up your relationship a lot in a way that you don't really expect. So I think you'll really enjoy it if you ever do decide to do that. So that
yeah.
will be a psychological thriller, you're saying. But right now, your books, both the short stories collection that you had written, which is Dead Echoes and Silent Screams, and then your poetry collection, One Tree in Hell, both of those are horror. They're in the horror genre. So I want to
Um,
ask you what about horror is what appealed to you? Like, why did you decide that you were going to kind of primarily become a horror author?
oh, that's a fun question. Like I start back when I was a kid. I was 13, I remember, and sitting in my room doing my own thing. And my brother comes in my room, which was a habit of his, just to pop in my room when he felt like it. And he comes over and drops this book in my lap and looks at me and goes, read it, turns around, walks out. And that was the whole
Mhm.
exchange. And so I looked down at the book, and it's Stephen King's The Stand.
Okay.
And up until that point, I knew who Stephen King was. My brother had several hardbacks of his on his bookshelf. I was never allowed to touch them. They were like his prized possessions. So
They're
I was pretty
sacred to
shocked.
him.
Yeah, yeah. So I was very shocked that he just dropped this thing in my lap. He's like, read it. Took me a month to get through that book as a 13-year-old reading it. But I got done with it and I went, wow, like this is amazing. I don't think I'd ever really read horror up until that point, like that kind of horror fiction. And
Mhm.
so I was like, that's what I want to read. I want more. I want to read that. Um, so yeah, I felt fortunate at that point that he did let me read other books he had on the bookshelf. Dolores Claiborne, other ones like that. And so it kind of sparked my love for horror at that point. And then yeah, it just kind of kept going as I got older. I read more and more, and I became a pretty big fan of Dean Koontz too. Brian Keene. I've read a
Mhm.
lot of Brian Keene, just other people like that. And when I started writing, I always liked telling scary stories. A lot of the stuff my mom kept that I wrote when I was a little kid are weird or creepy Halloween inspired stories. And so I thought when I started writing again, let's just go there. I love that genre. Let's just start that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've been told my writing could fit well on Tales from the Crypt, but some of it
Oh, okay.
also, yeah, yeah, some of
Mhm.
it also would be good for oh, because I write some weird and strange stuff too. I don't write all horror all the time. Um, so yeah, you kind of jump around a little bit there, but
Well, I know you comparing it to Tales from the Crypt. I am thinking, your book is a collection of short stories, so I would
yeah,
imagine it's a little bit kind of episodic in that way, where it's
yeah.
all just like and not necessarily monsters, but I'm thinking like Monster of the Week type thing, where each story is its own thing. Is there a kind of an overarching theme other than the fact that they're all horror stories, or are they all sort of individual and very separate from each other in Dead Echoes and Silent Screams?
They're independent. I didn't actually have an idea for a whole theme for the book, other than just to stick with horror stories.
Hmm.
Um, when I sat down to write it, it just kind of went, let's just see where the stories go. You know, ideas. I had some title ideas, but no story with them. Some story ideas with no title, and so I just kind of sat there and worked on each one, and thought, let's just see what it becomes and go from there. Plan on doing another collection down the road. That one actually will be themed.
Hmm.
But as far as this one, no, they're just try to stick with horror was kind of my idea with that one.
Nice. Well, tell me about some of the short stories in it. I don't know how many there are, or if you
20.
20. Wow, that's a lot.
Yep.
I've written a few short stories, and I don't always think it's easy to condense things that short.
Yeah.
So I'm always impressed by people who are able to do it, or do it effectively. Yeah, tell me about a few of the stories, because there's so many different kinds of horror. Like, some people will gravitate towards more supernatural themes, which is what I like.
Hmm.
If I'm watching a horror movie or reading a horror novel, that's what I'm into. And then other people will like things that are a little bit more real world, but just kind of gritty. So where do your stories fall? And why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the stories that are included in Dead Oak? Can't speak today. Dead Echoes and Silent Screams.
Yeah, of course. So the opening story is called A Raven, and it's actually kind of my nod to Mr. Edgar Allan Poe.
Hell
I
yeah.
read
Okay.
Poe. Yeah, I read Poe a lot growing up, and I actually have. Actually, it's out there in the other room. Sorry. I have a big collection of his. My wife got me years ago, and so he's been a huge influence on my life and my writing. And so, yeah, when I was putting a collection together, the first story I wrote was called A Raven. It doesn't follow Poe's Raven. It's my own take on it. It does open with a quote from the Raven, though, because I
Okay.
thought that was kind of cool to kind of throw that in there.
It's an
Give that,
homage. I like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep, yep. So I don't want to say much about it unless people want to read it, because I don't want to give anything away. But mine's bloodier than Poe's, so
Okay.
it's a pretty good opening to the book. Kind of shows you I can get pretty bloody. Um, and then yeah, it goes into one of my favorite little stories I wrote is the second story, which is Screaming at Trees.
Hmm.
And I had this idea for this guy out on a trail walking. I go out walking on the trail behind our house sometimes. Um, and he's out there walking around and he starts feeling like he's lost, and then realizes, are the trees moving? Like he
Hmm.
starts to wonder, is the trail moving? Are the trees moving? What's going on here? And kind of has a mental breakdown with the whole situation he finds himself in. But it was a fun story. It's not too long. It's a shorter one, but definitely actually no blood in that one. Just kind of really creepy and kind of weird.
Nice.
But yeah, I just kind of wanted to give that whole sense of panic and dread when you're not really sure what's happening around you. So
So, do you have? I was talking about this with actually those co-authors I mentioned earlier, about making an audio book of your book, basically. And
yeah,
I know that you can. I had never really looked into it very much, but they have it on Amazon has their like self-publishing version, which is called ACX, which I'm finally remembering that name. And have you ever thought about maybe going in that direction with anything, especially since you, as someone who's visually impaired and relies on books in audio format, have you ever thought about maybe doing that? I don't know if you have already, or if maybe down the line that might be something you could pursue.
I have thought about that. Yeah, I'd love my books out in audiobook. That would be really great. It's not something I've looked too much into though with the Amazon thing, because I wasn't sure exactly how it worked. If it was a good thing, like if it read it really good. Being that I listen to audiobooks all the time, I'm a big reader. I read at least a book a week, if not two.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a big reader,
Oh,
which is funny. I'm actually a book collector too. I have a bookshelf of multiple shelves
nice.
stacked with books. Um, so yeah, something about a physical copy of a book. You can't beat that. Just holding
Mhm.
that in your hands.
Well, that's
But
something that I was just whining about this, that I've kind of I primarily read ebooks at this point, and
mm,
that's basically because when I was living in New York and I was living in DC, and I had to take the subway every day to get to work, and
yeah,
so many times I had to just stand the entire time, and you're like shoved in with all of these people. It was just easier to hold my cell phone up or a Kindle with one hand and just read it that way when you can't even move
Yeah.
than it is to hold a physical book. So I just ended up getting used to it. So I'm in the kind of minority that prefers an ebook, and that's just because I'm conditioned to at this point. But there is something to be said about having physical copies of books, and it just looks really nice because I don't read as much as I should anymore, but I can't show anything. If I were to like have my bookshelf in the background of this video right now, there would be barely any physical books on it because everything is on my Kindle. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I really can't
Yeah.
display it at all. So it's nice to have physical copies. So it's cool that you do that.
It is. It's if I read a book and I really love it, I make sure I try to get a physical copy of it. I actually have two signed Brian Keene books out there on my shelf right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, wow.
good. Yeah, that was my wife got those for me for Christmas. Brian signed them and inscribed them to me.
Oh, that's
So that
cool.
was, yeah, it was the best present I've ever gotten. So
Mm-hmm.
have that on my shelf is pretty cool. But um, I was going with the audiobooks. That's where I was going for. I got
Oh, yeah,
sidetracked there.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so I rely on that, and it is. It's. I'd like to have my books and audiobook. I want to look into that more and really figure out how do I do that. I don't think I could narrate them. If I have to read something, it's to someone that my phone's reading. I have to have
Mm-hmm.
my AirPod in, and it
Yeah.
reads it, then I read it, then it reads it. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be not fun.
Well,
But
apparently people can like audition, like voice actors will, that's an option you have, is to have
oh,
them
okay,
audition to
yeah,
read your books. So you don't necessarily have to do it yourself, which I know I could never do it myself. It would be terrible if I was reading it because I could never do different accents or anything like that. I could do like a solid Russian accent, and that's the only one I can do.
yeah,
So there's no way I'd be able to
right.
act out anything. But yeah, like professional people, I guess, will audition to read your book out loud once they hear about the project, and it's maybe something you could check out because I think it would be really
Yeah.
cool
Hmm.
to have that as an audiobook. So for your poetry though, so that was Dead Echoes and Silent Screams we were talking about, which is all short stories. So you also write darker forms of poetry, which I
Yeah.
don't know a ton about poetry, honestly. I've read what I was forced to read in high school, and then I took one creative writing class in college where they had us, for part of our portfolio at the end, have to write like 3 poems or something. And I did my best with it, but it's definitely not my forte, and I'm just not used to writing in that format. So what's it like to write both in regular prose for your short stories, and then how does that compare to writing poetry?
It's extremely different. When you're writing a short story, you're sitting thinking of the character. Where's this character going? Where's this setting or scene going? But yeah, when I'm writing a poem, I'm I'm either writing on my phone or my Mac, depending on whichever one's in my hand at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm just sometimes it's a word. I have a word, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write a poem. Everything around that word, or that word's gonna spark the poem, and it just goes from there. But I've had moments where I've been sitting eating my lunch and a poem idea hit, and I just grab up my phone and I'll do a voice memo quick to just get it down fast, but and just talk it all out, and then go sit down and write it out. But yeah, it's an extremely different process when because like I said, you're going from the short story thing where like I said, I'm trying to do horror, creep people out and that kind of stuff, scare people with that. But then with the poem, I'm basically just pouring my emotions into it and seeing where it goes from there.
Mm-hmm. So for your
So
poetry, do you draw on personal issues or experiences and sort of let it out through there as a creative outlet for anything that you're going through? I know that it's like it is darker poetry.
yeah,
Even just the name of the poetry collection, One Tree in Hell, which is a great name,
thank you.
that it sort of gives away that these are not going to be super happy, flowery, just lovey
Yeah,
sort of poetry. It's going to be something a little bit darker. So do you draw on personal experience and put it into there, or is it just
I do. Yeah,
totally out of nowhere, sort of imaginative?
for most of them, yeah, it's a lot of you know personal things or emotions I pour into them. But other times, literally, it's like I have this line. I love that line. That is a great poem line. Let me write that down, and then
Hmm.
I'll sit down with it and just see where does this go. What comes out of that line. And what kind of poem is shaped from it. So
Cool.
it's kind of a mix of both. Actually, one thing to point out: One Tree in Hell is darker until you get to the end. I want to say about the last 10 poems actually are lighter, and there's
Okay.
actually two love poems dedicated to my wife at the end, towards the end
Oh,
too.
okay.
So yeah.
So it's almost like a journey through all those poems, like getting kind of out
Yeah.
of the darkness then. So that's really
Yep.
cool. So how, as someone who does not write poetry and really is clueless when it comes to this sort of thing, how long does it typically, and I'm sure they're all sort of different, but typically how long does it take you to kind of come up with an idea for a poem and then write it and then fix it and actually finish the whole thing?
If an idea hits me and I'm like in the zone writing it, 20, 30 minutes, I have a poem done, and then I'll go back and because I just write it all out fast, and then I'll go back and be like, okay, is this a couplet, 2 lines, then space, then 2 lines? Is this stanza? Am I
Mm-hmm.
doing 4 lines? Is this a paragraph style free verse poem where it's just literally a paragraph with punctuation? Or some of them I write, there's a line, no punctuation, then a new line, and it just goes like that.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'll go back and I'll look at how does the poem flow? What do I, how do I want it to sound? And just keep listening to it. And I figure it's probably about an hour. If when an idea hits and I can get the whole poem wrote out,
Mm-hmm.
about an hour I can have one done and I'm happy with it. So
Cool. Well, around how many poems are actually in One Tree in Hell? Like when you make a collection of them, is it a
mm,
lengthy collection? How many are actually included in it?
I put 47 in that one. Um,
Wow. Okay.
I had a book. We were talking before we recorded. I had a book come out in early 2020, Writing in Darkness, which is out of print. I've worked with a small press publisher at that point,
Hmm.
and that one featured 57 poems I wrote for that collection. But that last spring, the publisher and I separated ways, and I took the rights back to the book. And actually pulled it down off Amazon. I've
Hmm.
actually been featuring those poems on my Facebook author page and my Substack. They'll come
Oh,
out here and
good.
there.
So you still
Um,
actually found use for them
yep,
after
and
after pulling it.
there are 5 of those original poems from that collection in One Tree in Hell. I decided to feature my 5 favorite from that collection in there too.
Writing in Darkness, you had gone through a small publisher, you just said. So how does that compare with self-publishing your new work? Like, how is the process different? Because I don't have a lot of experience with
Yeah,
traditional publishing, and I definitely don't have experience with just a smaller press. I talked to people who queried with bigger publishers and all of that, but I don't know a whole lot about what it might look like if you're dealing with a small press. So how does that compare to your experience with self-publishing?
I think there's pros and cons of each. I like the fact that pretty much I can write what I want right now and
Mm-hmm.
put it out, and I'm not going to get told no because I'm not going to have a publisher come back to me and go, we don't want to put that out. I'm going to write it and it's going to go out, and if people read it, cool. If they don't like it, they don't like it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool having that kind of control that I don't have to worry. Um,
Well, that's sort
it's
of the
kind of
big thing for a lot of people when they go into
yeah,
self-publishing,
yeah.
especially for me, because I personally, that was the reason that I got
Mhm.
involved in it in the first place, was the idea of not needing approval to write things. I think ultimately that is sort of a double-edged sword there, in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's nice to have full creative freedom and not have to get someone else's approval, or follow people's content guidelines or anything like that, and to be able to put out whatever you want. But at the same time, it
yeah,
means that you don't have someone telling you that your work is actually publishable, like that it is
yeah, yeah,
decent enough to sell. So you end up having to have a lot more, you have more pressure on you as the author to be able to identify what work of yours is actually has enough value to put out, and which ones maybe are best just kind of kept to yourself as a little hobby. But it is nice to have that sort of freedom. I feel like I talk to other people about how there is occasionally a stigma around self-publishing and going indie
yeah.
when it comes to getting a book out there. And one of the big reasons that people might criticize it is because of the fact that these books aren't really screened ahead of time and people can just put out whatever they want. So the quality of that writing or those books may vary and not be entirely consistent. But
Yeah.
I feel that the ability to have that sort of creative freedom greatly outweighs any potential for, you know, kind of a lackluster book getting out there. I think in the end it is ultimately worth it. So sorry,
Yeah.
I went into a little bit of a tangent there.
No, one of those things where working with the small press I did, it was nice to have a publisher on board, but, and I'm going to watch how I say this, it wasn't the greatest experience for me. There was a lot lacking with that publisher. I caught edits that they missed
Oh,
when the book
okay.
came back to me to go through. And you know, my wife and I corrected those and sent it back, and then the corrected version didn't even get used. So I was like,
Really?
okay, awesome.
God, you would think that people who do this professionally as a professional
Yeah.
service would be a little bit more thorough about their
Well, and
editing.
I'm at the point too where I'm doing all of my marketing now myself. And
Hmm.
again, trying to watch what I say. I
Yeah.
did all of
No,
my
of course.
marketing back
Yes.
then too. You
Oh.
know, one Facebook post and one tweet apparently counted as marketing at that point for them.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
so I'm really not in a different boat at this point doing my own marketing. I was doing it back then.
Hmm.
So
So that hasn't
it's
changed.
not really, no.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, it's hard because there's that whole, for years everybody's been told, you know, get a publisher and get a publisher, and you know, it is cool when you can announce I'm working with this publisher. You know,
Hmm.
it felt special. It felt cool signing my first book contract. You know, I was pretty happy with that. But at the end of the day, what I want to do is I want to write books and I want to publish books and I want people to read my books. And being able to do that self-publishing, if I can do that and do a good job at it and make people, you know, enjoy what they're reading and it's not horrible, then, you know, that's the route I'm going to go. That's, you know, the best for me. So
Well, I guess the goal is ultimately to keep readers entertained and give them something that is worth their
yeah.
time. So if
Hmm.
that's really, you know, if that's your main motivator, which I think it is for a lot of us who are deciding to self-publish, then that means you're going to want to get your book out there faster than if you were to go through traditional publishing, which could take years for them to actually get your
Yeah.
book ready. So if you want this to get out there to readers, you want to get into people's heads and give them a little bit of relief from the real world, then
Yeah.
self-publishing and going indie is kind of the way to go in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
because you're not going to have the kind of delays that you would have from traditional publishing, which sometimes, you know, in your case, it sounds like it's not only a delay, but there's such differences between your
Yeah.
intent and then the intent of the publisher, or their willingness to actually sort of follow through on what they promise on their end, which is, I think people will usually think of going through a publisher means that you're not going to have to market, you're not going to have to promote
Yeah.
your own book, but that's not always the case. And
Yeah.
I was talking to another author who was saying that he had originally traditionally published, or maybe he wasn't saying that, maybe he was just saying when you do traditionally publish, a lot of the times the authors do still end up having to market it themselves, and it's
Yeah.
not
Hmm.
necessarily going to remove that responsibility off your plate. So
Yeah.
I think it's good
Well,
that you decided to go the indie route then.
I'm, you know, excited to get books out there and stuff, but I'm not going to sacrifice quality either, you know, and just,
Mm-hmm.
I need to get this book out. I have a book I'm editing now. I'm hoping to get out here. It'll be out before into 2024. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say exactly when, but it'll be out this year yet. And then I just finished last Wednesday. I just finished up the last chapter of my first full length novel.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so
That's
yeah,
great.
so
So
yeah, that was
uh,
fun.
tell me a little bit about it without any spoilers. I know that you
Uh,
still have to edit it and everything, but
oh
I'd
yeah,
love to hear the concept.
it's gonna need a lot of editing. Um,
Yeah.
it it's a unique approach. So it's horror fiction, of course, but it's told from my blind character's perspective. The whole book
Okay.
is wrote from his point of view. He's totally blind, and he finds himself basically in this horror-filled nightmare landscape. And he has to try to navigate it blind and not run into the creatures that live in that nightmare,
Hmm.
and not, get found by them and stuff. And there's some bloody stuff in there. It actually rains blood at one point, on actually a couple of different points on him, in that nightmare world.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting
That's
ride.
interesting.
Yeah, and I did it all from the blind character's perspective.
Hmm.
So, which was fun actually.
That sounds fun, especially fun for the reader to get that perspective, because I would
Yeah,
think that there's things that you have to do differently about
yeah,
explaining their experience than you would for a character who's not blind. So I've never actually read anything, at least I don't think I have, that is written from the perspective of someone who's visually impaired. So that would be
yeah,
very cool to see that, especially set in a genre that's it's not just general fiction, it's not just normal real world
yeah.
stuff. So
Hmm.
that's really interesting to me.
Well, it was fun, but it was also a bit of a challenge I found, because there's stuff I just naturally do,
Hmm.
and so then trying to explain that, when I'm walking along swiping with my cane, I'm like, okay, I have to actually explain this now, how he's doing this,
Yeah.
versus I naturally just walk and tap with my cane. And so then using words to describe all of that was a bit of a challenge to make sure I want to make sure I'm getting it right. And it's fiction, but I wanted what he was doing, how he's moving, how he's experiencing everything, to be as realistic as pretty much how I do things.
Hmm.
um, so I did have to take some time to sit and think about that, and um, stop and go out and take some walks, and just kind of think about, okay, I'm using my cane here, I'm doing this, and then, okay, let's go back home and write that down. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I just finished that last week. So
Great. Well, I'm excited for that one to come out. I'm sure you don't have a title yet, but I don't know if maybe you have something in
actually I
mind.
do. That
Oh,
one's
okay.
called Dark.
What's the working title? What did you just say?
Dark is the name of that one.
Dark. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
um
I'm excited for that to come out. So everyone who's watching, I'm going to put links to Matthew's books that are currently available, but when that one comes out, I definitely want to I'm going to update the description and include that, because I think that's one that is going to interest a lot of people who watch my videos.
yeah, I'm hoping to have that one out next year. Like I said, I just finished it, so now I'm going to put it aside for a bit. I'll come back to it sometime this fall. I'll start the editing process on it, which is it's going to be fun, because it's
Yeah.
80 right currently it's 82,242 words, so
Oh,
it's
whoa.
it's a good
Okay. That's a
size
lot.
book.
That's a lot to go through. That is a lot
Yeah,
to go
it's
through.
took me about 3 months to write that one.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I said, Paper Nightmare is my next one that's coming out this year. That's a novella. Working on that, editing that, and waiting to hear back from my graphic artist on the cover. We're working on sketching that out and figuring that out right now. But hopefully,
Nice.
here next couple of months, I'll have that out. So
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for being here today and talking to me
yeah,
about an experience that I really haven't had any exposure to before and I've never really heard described. So it's really interesting to just hear about every author's personal experience, but yours in particular, it's very different than the people that I've talked to. So thank you so much for talking about that.
yeah.
And
Thanks for having me on, man. I had a
yeah,
great time.
so everyone who's watching, again, I'm going to put links to Matthew's books in the description, so please go check those out if you are interested in horror, and especially interested in horror short stories or poetry. Then go check this out. So, stay tuned for next week's episode, and make sure to subscribe so we can keep supporting more indie authors out there. And if you're a self-published author and you're interested in joining us on Rough Riders, please send me an email at roughrider@protonmail.com, and we'll set something up. So until next time, thanks so much for your support, everyone, and God bless you all.